that God keeps his promises even when we don't. God keeps his promises even when we don't keep ours. And even our disobedience and our short-sightedness isn't going to cancel God's faithfulness. Again, not even when we do dumb things. Yeah, that doesn't mean there aren't consequences that we have to live with sometimes as a result of our actions. You page forward into chapter 16, and you see there again, Abraham's taking this cultural view of marriage and of women rather than God's view. And because God's not being fast enough in delivering on his promise of giving him a child, Abraham says, well, okay, let me have a child by my wife's servant. Now that's walking all over what God really wanted him, how he wanted him to treat his wife, how he wanted him to treat marriage, how he wanted him to treat the promise. And guys, a child was born, and there was some tension that came into the relationship because of that. That's a consequence. In fact, the tension between the ancestors of the two sons of Abraham kind of goes on to this day. But, and this is important for understanding grace, the pattern is that even when Abraham again does something dumb in the same pattern of doing something dumb, God still doesn't give up on Abraham. Even after once again, he results to the same place he'd been before. Instead of starting over with somebody who would get it a little quicker or follow him a little more faithfully, God just comes to Abraham and he sticks with him. And he sticks with the promise he made. And he shows Abraham grace when perhaps what Abraham actually deserved was a little more, let me call it remedial teaching. And when I see that about God, it shows me another part of the pattern that gives me hope. You see, when I look at Abraham's story and then I look at my story, I see that I mess up all the time too. And I'm doing some of the same things wrong that I know God's told me not to do, and I'm still sometimes not getting it right. And my faith hasn't grown anywhere close to the point of Abraham's, even to this point. And I might despair that maybe God's done with me, but this pattern of grace gives me hope and encouragement and confidence, and it says that God treats me the same way that he treats Abraham. And that matters. See the pattern? Abraham messes up, and God gets Abraham back on track and deals with Abraham in a very gracious manner. Each time, what he does is he comes and he reminds Abraham of the original promise, and a promise that was linked not to Abraham's obedience, but just the promise of blessing that God gave him that came to him by grace, not because Abraham deserved it, but get these points. But because God loved him, because God chose him, because God's words and promises are true, and because nothing is too hard for God to do. That's grace. God loved him, God chose him, God's words and promises are true, and nothing is too hard for God to do. And that's how God treats me too. God's true to pattern. I deserve punishment, remedial training, and God gives me grace instead. He reminds me of the promises, and he calls me back to faith, and he forgives my mistakes, and he gives me another chance to get it right and to trust him more and to grow in the faith that he gave me in the first place.